And there are roses.
Yes, but the moss rose was hardly known at all before.
Through the worst days of the war, bloomed incessantly. Almost as if the war was something of a help.
The Charts had something of a reputation for them.
One always forgets the roses. How exquisite they are.
Yes. Downright rudeness I had to put up with. Long before there was any cause for it. And the inquisitiveness. She hadn't been here a week before they started making remarks about her, poor Laura. They didn't stop at nasty remarks either. My dear, listen. Now you listen to this. People in this town are not such fools as you think. And unless you get rid of the crazy old foreigner, that witch of Prague, who you say is a relative, steps will be taken which you will not like.
I just think
it goes on. This is a friendly warning, but a good many of us are keeping an eye on her. And if you allow her to stay...
It's so childish.
Nevertheless, this time next year, you'll all be very much the worse for wear.
So utterly childish. I just cannot begin to understand the mentality of people like
That was the first. But afterwards, my dear, really. You think who? In a small place like this, who?
Well, I might give a guess. But why on earth didn't you let me know what was going on? Malvern isn't the other end of the world. Why were you so vague?
Well, because it was vague. Well, it was vague at first. Ricky said I was to take no notice of it. Keep quiet and it'll all blow over. Told me not to go writing a lot of gossip to anybody.
But your own sister, sure.
Well, you just don't know what happens to letters these days. Oh, I could tell you a thing or two, I can promise you. Well, I said, what next? This is a free country, isn't it?
Of course.
Well, Ricky said there wasn't much free nowadays, except a third-class ticket to Kingdom Come. Now, what could you have done about it, my dear? You couldn't have had Laura to stay now, could you?
I suppose Tom...
Absolutely detests her. You know he does. No, I thought the best thing was to advise her to go back to London. I tried to be as nice as possible. I spoke as kindly as I could. Laura... Oh, don't bother about the crumbs, dear. Mrs. Tamplin will do that afterwards. Laura, I hate to tell you, dear, but Ricky and I think it best that you should leave here. There's such a lot of chatter going on, and it isn't fair on him. You know, he's in the Ministry of Supply, and he wishes he was properly in the war, and, well, it makes him uncomfortable, you know. Mrs. Tamplin will do that later, dear. Now the Blitz is over, there are all these nice divan rooms that are being advertised round Holland Park and Finchley Roadway. You could be quite comfortable. You can find the most attractive little restaurants close by. Oh, do you remember that one we went to just off the Kensington High Street behind Ponting's? Oh, the food was so good. The most marvellous bratwurst. For the middle of the war, if you think of it, don't you remember? The one where the menu was in English on one side and continental on the other.
What do you mean by continental?
I suppose I mean continental. Well, German, if you like.
Of course you mean German. This Anglo-German love-hate affair.
Oh, I dare say, Laura, I dare say. But London's a big place, Laura. And whatever its disadvantages, it has one advantage. There are lots of people. Anybody odd isn't so conspicuous, especially nowadays. I mean, if you don't like the idea of London, you could try Maidstone or Tunbridge Wells. Tunbridge Wells is very nice. But I shouldn't stay on here.
Why?
Why? What do you mean, why? Because somebody started a lot of nasty talk, Laura, that's why. They found out that you've lived abroad for a long time, and they say you only came here when you were forced to, and they're suspicious. And considering everything, you can't blame them, can you?
Oh, no, 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 you can't blame them. It's one of the little games they are allowed to play to take their minds off the real horror.
What real horror? Do you mean this isn't horror, all this?
Oh, I'll have to see.
I'm sorry, Laura. It's no use thinking you can ignore public opinion because you can't.
Do you wish me to leave at once? Or can I have a few days to pack?
My dear, it's dreadful to see somebody's face go thin while you're watching. But it was her own fault. She got people against her somehow. She behaved so unwisely. Oh, there was a dreadful quarrel with Fluting.
Oh, God, fluting.
But it need never have happened. You see, he was dining here, and he said that some of the wax up at the station smelt.
What?
Smelt.
Oh.
Oh, he was being sarcastic or something about their laundry allowance. Well, what can you do? Smile and change the subject, that's all you can do. My dear, Laura absolutely flew at him. She said, "Sir, they smell, you stink."
At dinner?
Just like that. He couldn't believe his ears. "I beg your pardon." You know that voice of his. Then she said, "Inverted commas." Oh, he gave us such a look. I thought, you've made an enemy there, my girl. Oh, she could be very irritating.
Well, I call it very tactless. And badly behaved, too.
Tactless and badly behaved on both sides, you must admit.
Oh, fluting's such a worthless creature.
It's better not to answer them, dear. I told her, don't rise to it. Believe me, it's a mistake. Oh, but she thought she knew better, I suppose. It was one silly thing like that after another, making enemies all over the place. And she brooded. She worried. Oh, she worried so dreadfully over the war.
Well, who doesn't?
Yes, but this was different somehow. You'd have thought she was personally responsible for the whole thing. She had all sorts of cracky ideas about why it started and what it meant.
Trying to empty the sea with a tin cup.
Just like that.
I do not excuse the assassination. The Jews did not excuse it. But the horrible retribution, that was excused.
Well, you couldn't expect the free nations of Europe to down tools and march to war because a totally obscure Polish Jew kills an equally obscure German ambassador in Paris.
I'm certain Rick is right, Laura. If the world had known these frightful things were going on and that there was all this unpleasantness, they'd never have been allowed to get away with it.
Do you believe they did not know? Or they did not want to learn? All over Europe, thinking people realized there could be no peace with that regime. Perhaps there ought to be no peace, but not here, evidently. Unfortunately, not all people are thinking people.
It's too complicated, Laura, for you to talk about the why and the wherefore. So she started this book to prove these cracky ideas.
This is the first I've heard about a book. What book?
Oh, dear. It's so difficult to explain. You remember all those letters she used to write, trying to find out what had happened to her friends?
I remember she was always writing letters.
Through the Red Cross and Cook's via Lisbon, oh, goodness knows what.
Well, after all, it was very natural.
Oh, yes. Well, suddenly she stopped. She never had any news. I used to wonder how she could go on, week after week, month after month, poor Laura. Oh, here it is. But it was curious, the way she gave up hope suddenly, one day, just like that. It was then she changed. She got this odd expression. She got very silent. And when Ricky tried to joke her out of it, she wouldn't answer.
Come on, Laura, keep smiling. You're as bad as Mona Lott. Being so cheerful, it keeps you going.
Yes, you do seem low these days, dear. Do you feel off colour?
What's the matter? Has the Gestapo caught your sweetheart?
Ricky, that was an unkind thing to say.
Oh, the old girl's got no sense of humour at all, has she? She's not very sociable either. What on earth does she do with herself up in a room all day?
Reading, probably. She's always the brainy one of her family.
Brainy? Oh, that's one word for it. Why can't she do something with herself like everyone else around here? We all know there's a war on. It's a bloody time for everyone. Why must she make it that bit more bloody?
Give her time, Ricky. She's more unhappy than she lets on.
Well, why should she plant herself on us?
She hasn't planted herself on us. I invited her. Anyway, she pays for her room and board.
That was all right until those letters came, but I can't have her here any longer. You must tell her so.
I thought I'd better drop a hint. That was the way he felt. And there she was, my dear, surrounded by a lot of papers, cutting paragraphs out and pasting them in this exercise book. When I asked her if I could have a look, she said, "Oh, I don't think this will interest you." Of course, when the row came, this was the thing they had most against her. Oh, it's such a comfort to see them getting back safely these days, isn't it? When the police brought it back, Ricky said I must destroy it, but I wanted to show it to you first.
First all those horrible anonymous letters, and now a ridiculous exercise book. I don't begin to understand this.
Well, it's what I told you, dear. Headlines, articles, advertisements, and jokes. Oh, lots of jokes and cartoons and things, look.
Sort of propaganda stuff.
Oh, sort of. Oh, it was only to pass the time away. There was no harm in it.
No, I suppose not. Well, who did that?
Oh, I don't know. The police, perhaps. Seems they got a good laugh when they read it. That must have been one of the funniest bits.
A forlorn hope. What forlorn hope?
A forlorn hope. First impression. And the second, an unforgiving sky. A mechanical quality about everything and everybody which I find frightening. When I buy a ticket for the tube, get onto a bus, go into a shop, I feel like a cog in a machine in contact with other cogs, not like one human being associating with other human beings. Coming back to England was the worst thing I could have done. I long violently to escape. But I'm as powerless as a useless, worn-out cog.
But she seems to be writing to somebody. Who?
I've no idea. She never told me much about herself. I was pleased to have her. She paid well. £3 a week she gave me. And she was really awfully good about helping me in the house. I was quite pleased to have her, at first.
After I realized I was not going to get any answers from my letters, the nightmare finally settled on me. I was too miserable to bear the comments on what had happened in Europe. They were like slaps in the face. Can't you see there's another side to this eternal question, who let down who and when? Always we end with this quarrel. If you can call trying to knock a wall down by throwing yourself against it a quarrel. I know I'm being unwise. So I protect myself by silence, by avoiding everybody. I read a great deal of the time. I take long walks. I do all the things you do when you are shamming dead. These endless, futile arguments we have. Yes, the world dominated by Nordics, German version. What a catastrophe. But if it were dominated by the Anglo-Saxon, wouldn't that be a catastrophe too? And then, of course, England and the English. There's something strange about their attitude to women as women. Not a dislike. That isn't so strange, of course. But it is all completely taken for granted. Nobody questions it. Least of all, the women themselves. Trained to revenge any unhappiness they feel on each other, or on the children, or on any individual man. But dealing with men as a whole is a streak of servility, something cold, calculating, lacking in imagination. I could make my collection as long as I like. There is any amount of material. For Blanca. You cannot go against the spirit of a country with impunity. Propaganda from the cradle to the grave can do a lot. Why do I take the trouble? You will never read this, and I shall not escape.
Couldn't she find something else to occupy her mind, then of all times?
Do you know, there are moments, don't laugh, when I see what she meant. All very exaggerated, of course.
Nonsense.
I'm very unpopular in this damn town, and they leave me no doubt about that. They will believe anything. Anything except the truth. The plane tree outside my window has been lopped, and they can look straight into my room. Sometimes people loiter in the street, and they gape up at this house. Or I think they do.
Oh, what a stifling afternoon. Thundery, don't you think?
Mm.
Well, Marion, if you told Ricky about these hallucinations, no wonder there was a row.
I never told him.
Well, why was there all this trouble? Did she seem crazy? Did she look crazy?
No, not exactly. Only a very strained expression. I don't know why they made such a dead set at her. Her gift for making enemies, I suppose.
Fluting, naturally.
Not only fluting. And she was so careless, leaving that wretched book lying about. So the Daily Woman spread a rumour that she was trying to pass on information to the enemy. Well, really. Oh, she got on the wrong side of everybody. Everybody. You know of Mr. Roberts next door?
Yes.
Well, she quarrelled with him. You can't imagine why. Because his dog is called Bronte and he kicks it.
Oh.
Well, he pretends to kick it. Here's Emily Bronte, or my pet aversion, he says, and then he pretends to kick it. Oh, it's only a joke, but Ricky's right. She has no sense of humour.
I don't know how you can live without a sense of humour.
One day there was a shouting match over the fence about the dog or something. Really, Laura, I told her, you're making a fool of yourself. What have you got against him? He's a dear old man. And you know, she gave me the strangest look. And then she said, I don't know how you can breathe after a lifetime of this. Then more anonymous letters came, and things began to go very wrong.
You've got to get rid of her, Mary.
I'm doing everything I can.
When's she going, then?
One day next week.
That's what you said last week, and the week before that. What I'd like to know is, when does next week finally become this week?
Goes against the grain to turn her out when she looks so ill.
Now, the bath's in a state. What's the old girl want to clutter up the bathroom for?
Be fair, Ricky. She must wash, whatever her age is. If she didn't, it'd only be another grievance against her. She had some good clothes when she first came. She used to make the best of herself.
Oh, these refugees all dressed up and nowhere to go.
Now she doesn't give a damn what she looks like. And you blame her for that. She's aged a lot, too. Ricky, if you do your best to get people down, you can't blame them when they look down. Can you?
What a lot of junk to travel around the world with. A cork with a face drawn on it. Postcard of the Miraculous Virgin from the Church of Saint Julien le Pauvre. A china inkstand, patterned with violets. A quill pen, never used. A ginger jar. A box full of old letters. Fox fur. With the lining gone. Silk scarves, each with a history. The red, the blue, the brown, the purple. The green box I call my jewel case. The little golden key which fits the case. I'm going to lock my heart and throw away the key. The bracelet we bought in Florence because it looked like stained glass window. The ring he gave me. The old flowered workbox with colored reels of cotton and silk and my really sharp scissors. The leather cigarette case with the photograph inside it. And last, the blue envelope on which he wrote, "Listen, listen," in red chalk.
Laura, my dear.
I've started packing.
I do wish she'd come down. This is the worst raid we've had.
Hopefully she's packing her things.
She must be asleep.
How could anyone sleep through this? I expect the zip on the ruddy siren suit's got stuck.
Oh, Ricky, you are horrid to her.
Nothing of the sort. I just wish she'd pack her tents and silently slip away.
I better go and see if she's all right. Laura, is this the moment to fool about with music? And your blackout's awful.
Hudson! Mrs. Hudson! Your train late! You've got a late train, Mrs. Hudson!
Now what's she doing?
I thought so! I thought so! The Universal Robot had arrived! The great day of the rush of Universal Robot has finally arrived!
Sorry, Mrs. Hudson. You know the law.
Oh,
You're
law!
just showing
Law!
us the
Law! Your law! And what about the prophets?
That does it. That's enough. Go back to your room. She's as mad as a hatter. I won't stand for it another day. She must get out.
Sometimes I wonder if she wasn't right. You know, there was a very nasty spirit about.
Well, there always has been.
Yes, but it's worse now. Much worse. Oh, these look so pretty halfway up the stairs. Against the white, you know. As soon as I was in the butcher's, I knew it had got round already. I knew by the way people looked at me. One woman, I couldn't see who, said that horrible creature ought to be shot. And somebody else said the ones who back her up ought to be shot, too.
In the butcher's?
I didn't give them any satisfaction, I can tell you. I stood there in the queue, my head up, as if I hadn't heard a word. When I got back here, the police were in the house. Well, they said it was about the lights, but they'd been waiting for a pretext, no doubt about that. Well, they had a warrant, searched her room, and took the book.
Well, naturally.
And all her letters. At lunchtime, Fluting telephoned Ricky and said there was so much strong feeling in the town that something must be done to get her away at once. After the police left, Laura locked herself in her room, and there she stayed. I knocked and called, and after Fluting called, Ricky wanted to break the door down. I've never seen him in such a state. My dear, green with rage. I don't know how I kept so calm. But I look older, too. Don't you think?
Did Ricky break the door down?
No. I said we'd get Dr. Pratt. He'd know what to do.
Did Dr. Pratt say she was insane? What a terrible thing.
No, not exactly. No, he didn't say that.
Of course, Pratt's an old-fashioned man, isn't he?
Oh, yes, and as obstinate as the devil. Try to rush him and he'll go the other way. I got the impression that somebody else had been on at him. Fluting, probably.
She's been treated badly, from all I can hear.
Well, why doesn't she go somewhere where they'll treat her better? I don't want to hear. I think she ought to be properly certified. Then we'd all know where we were.
I'll do nothing of the sort. There's too much of that going on, and I don't like it. Anyway, the police aren't pressing any charges.
They hadn't any charge to press. Well, except the light, and goodness knows it was the merest glimmer.
I think, however, it is advisable for Laura to leave the town.
Well, obviously she can't continue here.
Is there any friend she can go and stay with? Be better for her not to be alone, I'm sure you understand that.
Well, I don't know that there is. Ricky, do you think Tom might...
Oh. So, nobody?
Well, not anybody that we can think of.
Very well, then. I shall ask her if she's willing to go to a sanatorium for a rest.
She should have been in one long ago. I think a sanatorium's a splendid idea. I'd like to see her go off to a sanatorium pronto.
Mr. Hudson, if I may say so, I think you're being inhuman.
Inhuman rubbish. I just want the bloody old fool to keep quiet.
Ricky, please.
Inhuman? That's the word that keeps coming into my head all the time now. Inhuman, inhuman, inhuman.
Oh, I know. When one looks back on it. And you know, she was perfectly all right until the last moment. The taxi was waiting and she didn't come down, so I thought we'd better go and fetch her.
Come on, old girl, it's moving day.
Aren't they?
They weren't here last time I went for a walk.
Oh, but they come out so quickly, so unexpectedly.
And the smell. So perfect. There's nothing so perfect as the rose.
Have one for your buttonhole.
No.
Oh, yes.
Please not. Let them grow. One forgets about the roses. Always a mistake. It can never happen. Not while they are roses.
Taxi's waiting there. Quite crazy, you see, poor Laura. Whatever Dr. Pratt's opinion was.
Is this the place?
Yes, it is. What do you make of it?
I don't like it, Marion. It doesn't appeal to me.
Well, what was I to do, my dear? The sanatorium Dr. Pratt suggested was far too expensive. She's got hardly any money left, you know. I'd no idea how little she had. What'll happen when it's all gone, I daren't think. So Ricky got on to this place near Newcastle. I showed Laura the prospectus and asked her if she minded going, and she said no. I said, well, you do realize you need a rest, don't you, dear? And she said, yes, I realize that. Oh, of course, she can always come away if she wants to.
Can she, do you think?
Well, I suppose she can. I must say the doctor there doesn't seem to... Oh, I know I ought to go and see her, but I dread it so. I keep putting it off. Of course, there's a golf links there. Not much of a garden, but a golf links. They can play golf as soon as they're getting better.
But does Laura play golf?
We live in hopes. We live in hope.